cut my brother and his girlfriend out for leaking my baby news to my psychotic ex, and now my family is divided. My name is Emily, and a few years ago, I went through something that changed the course of my life. I had been with my ex-boyfriend, Jake, for over 5 years. We were both 27 at the time, and our relationship was moving toward marriage and searching for a home together. But everything came undone in our last year together. Jake had a sudden psychotic episode that turned our world upside down. He was taken to a mental health facility at the hospital for his own safety. When he came home, everything about him was different. His personality had completely changed. He began to experience intense delusions, hallucinations, and constant paranoia. The person I had fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone who couldn't recognize me as the person who wanted to help. He accused me of cheating, insisted I was manipulating those around him, and told me, over and over, just how much he hated me. It was heartbreaking. After some time, he was discharged from the hospital, and I assumed responsibility for him, hoping against hope that he would recover. I sat through every mental health appointment, and countless nights I stayed awake to make sure he wouldn't wander into the night during his psychotic episodes. But he grew angrier, and his paranoia became suffocating, impossible to penetrate. He stopped trusting me, yet he also wouldn't let me out of his sight, convinced I was betraying him. When I finally saw a slight improvement, I made the hardest decision I've ever made. I broke up with him. I waited until I felt he was stable enough to fend for himself and helped him move back in with his parents. The guilt hit me like a tidal wave. I felt like I was abandoning him, but I had nothing left inside myself to give. I hadn't been loved for months. I was just the emotional punching bag, and all while grieving for the man I once knew who wasn't coming back. There are details about his condition I won't share to protect his privacy, but I never blamed him. I needed to save myself. I chose happiness, even though it meant enduring a messy, painful breakup. Despite everything, we tried to remain friends, at least for a while. During this period, I kept helping him when I could. I could tell Jake still hoped we'd reconcile someday, but I was moving forward. It wasn't long before I met Sam, an amazing guy, now my partner, a few years older than me at 30. The moment Jake found out I was seeing Sam, he spiraled into a severe psychotic episode. He threatened both of us, convinced I'd been unfaithful to him with Sam, even though I hadn't met Sam until after Jake and I broke up. The threats and messages were intense and unrelenting. My only thought was for our safety and Jake's well-being, so I contacted his family and told them what happened. They managed to get him help. I realized then that I could no longer maintain any contact with Jake. Trying to hold on to the remnants of our friendship was only making things worse, for both of us. The only tie I had left to Jake was Jess, my brother's girlfriend. Jess is 29, and she and Jake have been friends for years. She knew all the dark corners of our relationship yet never took sides. I considered her a friend, and it comforted me to know Jake still had someone he could lean on, even if it couldn't be me. Then, in March of 2022, my life took another turn. I discovered I was pregnant with Sam's baby. 3 months along, and just coming to terms with it myself, I shared the news cautiously with my family and a few close friends. I pleaded with everyone to keep it secret. I wasn't ready for a public announcement. I was a moody, anxious mess, nauseous and overwhelmed at the thought of dealing with any added drama. But less than 24 hours after sharing the news with my family, my phone rang. It was Jake. In a voicemail, he announced he knew I was pregnant, and then, in a delusional twist, said he was filing for custody of the baby. My heart dropped. I could tell immediately he was spiraling into another episode. I didn't respond, but instead, I reached out to his family, letting them know he had tried to contact me. I could only hope they'd be able to keep him safe, and that this drama wouldn't threaten the fragile new life I was just beginning to build. By this point, it had been over a year since Jake and I had even spoken. He didn't know where I lived or worked, so I wasn't worried about him showing up to physically confront me. The only way he could have found out any details was through Jess. I called her to confront her, and she admitted it right away. She was incredibly apologetic, insisting she hadn't thought it would matter. She believed Jake would be fine with the news and said he deserved to know. I was upset, but since I hadn't explicitly told her not to tell Jake, maybe she'd made an honest mistake. I had told her to keep the news to herself, but I bit down on my anger to keep the peace. I forgave her, but I made one thing absolutely clear. She was not to tell Jake any more information about me or the baby. She agreed. She promised it wouldn't happen again. Months went by, and I heard nothing from Jake. Then, last weekend, Sam and I had our baby shower. We'd planned it as a party more than a traditional baby shower, a hired function room at a bar, 80 people we loved invited to celebrate. For a while, the night was perfect, laughter, hugs, excitement, everything I wanted to remember about this new chapter. Then, in the middle of it all, I saw Jake standing by the bar, scanning the crowd. My stomach dropped. I managed to slip away before he saw me and found the security team. Our event space was roped off for us, so I simply told them he hadn't been invited. I watched, heart pounding, as security approached him. Instantly, his face contorted in anger and he started yelling, demanding to talk to me before leaving. Sam and some of our friends rushed over, trying to calm him, but it only escalated. He screamed at Sam, claiming to everyone that he was the baby's real father and insisting Sam and I had never really broken up. At that point, I left and hid in the ladies' room, trembling, until my mum came and assured me Jake was gone. Eventually, after more shouting, he left. I was mortified. The celebration ended early. I couldn't stop crying. A few days passed. My emotions hadn't settled, and I decided to confront Jess. She was the only person who could have told Jake where and when the baby shower was happening. This time, I didn't hold back. Jess admitted it immediately and apologized again, but then said, "How could I keep this a secret from him?" That infuriated me beyond words. I told her, with a voice I barely recognized, that she would no longer receive any information about me or the baby, and that I would be cutting her out of my life. I'm not proud of how I screamed, but I was in disbelief. How could she be so irresponsible? It wasn't her news to share. My brother called me after, asking for forgiveness on Jess's behalf. He admitted she was wrong but didn't believe he should be punished alongside her, knowing that by cutting her out I would also cut him off from any baby updates. He even pleaded that I should blame Jake for his reaction, not Jess, arguing that she never knew he'd show up and that the damage was already done. Honestly, I don't blame Jake for what happened. He is seriously mentally ill and needs help. It's not his fault entirely, and I know, deep down, he'll regret all of this one day, when he's in a better place. After everything that happened, I reached out to his family. They told me he had been readmitted to the mental health ward after threatening self-harm if he wasn't allowed to see my baby. As much as my heart aches for what he's going through, my feelings are clear. I don't feel safe anymore. I have a child to protect, and the thought that Jake believes this baby is as terrifies me. I haven't budged with Jess or my brother. My family all think I'm being too harsh, that my brother has a right to meet his niece or nephew. We still don't know the sex, but the truth is, I just can't trust Jess. She's already betrayed me once, and my fury is still raw. I keep thinking, what if Jake had confronted me at the shower or something even worse? Anything could have gone wrong. Now, I'm caught in the agony of not knowing what to do. My heart breaks at the idea that my brother might not get to meet the baby for a long time, but the fear lingers, that Jess might leak something else to Jake and put us in real danger. My parents and the rest of my family have all agreed not to tell Jess or my brother anything about the baby under threat of also being cut out. Still, I don't know how long I can stick to this before I crack. Sam, thankfully, is completely in my corner. Without him, I'd be a mess. I'm desperate for advice. It's getting harder to stick to my guns and keep this boundary. I keep worrying that, somehow, news will slip through Jess or another family member. My parents, especially, seem reluctant to promise they won't tell my brother when the baby is born. I feel like I'm hanging on by a thread. Update 1. I knew I needed to give an update, especially after so many people warned me about Jess, 29F, and, heartbreakingly, they were right. My life changed rapidly. My baby arrived earlier than expected. I am overjoyed to share that Sam, 30M, and I now have a beautiful son, who is already 10 weeks old, born at 38 weeks. Sam and I are absolutely besotted with him and couldn't be happier. Shortly after my original ordeal, Sam and I made a big decision. We moved out of our cramped one-bedroom apartment to a larger house, wanting more space for our growing family. A big consideration in our choice was distance. Our apartment had been only 5 minutes from my brother and Jess, and I just couldn't handle the anxiety of knowing Jake, 27M, might turn up unexpectedly, especially given I suspected Jess may have shared where we lived. Our new place is now a good 45-minute drive from them, an added layer of safety. We didn't tell them the address. We settled into our new home, and for the first month, things were blissfully quiet. I heard, through Jake's family, that he was still in the grips of a severe mental health crisis, under an extended hold at the hospital for a psychotic episode that just wouldn't subside. He was refusing medication. I had also warned his family about the depth of his involvement with Jess, and they took it seriously. They informed the hospital that Jess should not be allowed to visit. My family, for once, stopped pressuring me to forgive Jess. My mum, especially, had a heart-to-heart with me and, at last, truly understood why I had to cut off my brother. It broke my heart to push away someone I had always been so close with, but all of your advice rang in my ears and I realized I had to